Okay, what's going on, everybody? Hey, we're going to start in just like 1 minute here. If you are joining us in our Facebook group, love for you to just drop a comment in there. Let us know that you're watching with us. If you're on Zoom, you can do the same thing. Just throw a comment in the. Love to know who's with us. We'll just start in 1 more minute here. Our friend Ron Frost is jumping on Zoom. We see there Ron Frost.
Who's that?
Who's that guy? Friday Conversations. Okay. Yeah, let's do it. You guys ready?
So ready.
I'm ready.
Awesome. Well, hey, good to be with everybody today for another Friday Conversation. It's been fun. We've been doing this over the last few weeks, and it's kind of I don't know about you, Ben, but it's kind of like the end of my week. It's like the thing that like, woo, it's over. And so we're jumping in another conversation today, and specifically we wanted to talk about community college ministry, which is a hot topic. When you talk to different college ministry leaders out there, it's like this big question of how do they begin to engage with community college campuses. And so Ben and I wanted to invite our friend and staff member, Steve York, to join us. And you'll get a chance to hear from Steve, his passion for community colleges, some of the strategies, some of the things that he's figured out along the way. And hopefully what you can do is just learn some nuggets from him and benefit from this conversation as you begin to, figure out what it looks like to engage with a community college campus. So how you doing today, Ben?
I'm doing well, man.
Cool.
It's Friday. It's been a productive morning.
It's good. It's good. Awesome. Well, Steve, hey, why don't you introduce yourself real quick so people can get to know you a little bit?
Yeah. So my name's Steve, and Steve York, and I've been in full-time ministry since 1997. So I was a youth pastor in Michigan. I grew up in California, and then went to school at UC Santa Barbara, studied linguistics, got married and moved to Michigan, and was a youth pastor there for 7 years, and went to seminary there at Moody Theological Seminary in Plymouth, Michigan. And then we moved back to California, back to Merced, and I was in the Central Valley, and I was a youth pastor there for 12 years. And then transitioned into college ministry because we had so much, just so much success at doing community college ministry at Merced College. And then I transitioned into doing college ministry and working with Elementum.
Yeah, which has been a really fun story. We won't get into it. We'll share it at some point down the road, just how Steve and I met through a mutual ministry connection, and then really just his heart with wanting to see things happen in California on community college campuses really aligned with our heart in Elementum. So let's jump into this conversation. Let's just kind of see where it leads. So I got a couple questions here. We can just kind of comment and rap about it for a few minutes. But here's the first question I want to throw out for Ben, for you, for myself, Steve, for you. Why are community colleges an essential target for intentional ministry?
So this is something I was recently doing some reading on for talking with a bunch of pastors in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, Minnesota area. And I was actually kind of surprised by some of these numbers. So one, there is a lot of community college campuses around the country, over 1,000, close to 1,200. And 40% of the students who are attending college are attending, and 40% who are doing undergraduate work are attending community college campuses, which at least as of 2017 is about 8.5 million people. One of the unique things though, right, is a lot of the people who are on those community college campuses are, they're older, they're not necessarily college age per se, what you traditionally think of, or they're younger. Like for myself, I was doing post-secondary education in Minnesota where I was in high school and 2 years at the community college that wasn't too far from our home. So those are a couple of things that we keep in mind. There's 8.5 million. That is a solid mission field to work with.
Yeah, it's a small mission field.
Yeah.
How about you, Steve? Why is it so? Why do you think it's so essential to have these conversations around community college?
Yeah, one thought is just that there's so many community colleges where there's pretty much no ministry or very little ministry happening to reach those students. And even thinking about the kind of big named college ministries, national college ministries like Cru, University, Navigators, they're they recognize the huge need on community college campuses, but they don't have the staff. Like they don't even have the staff to reach all the four-year campuses. So so there's just an amazing ripe harvest right there, and there's such a need, and the students are so open spiritually. So
yeah, that's really good.
One of the other things I'd add in there too is that, like, you think about a lot of the demographics of people who are attending community colleges are in general a little bit different than people who are attending universities. Generally, they're people are we don't have the finances to attend a more expensive private four-year university or even a state one, or maybe they're still living at home with their parents, and the primary reason they're choosing community college is because it's less expensive. So those are some things to take into account as well. I think, we usually have this kind of picture of a college student who's living on campus, they do their homework and then they're playing video games and partying on the weekends and stuff. But the reality is that, particularly for those who are going to community college campuses, a lot of them, there may be a single mom who's 19 and is working two jobs, or they're in their mid-20s and they're juggling something like 30 or between 30 and 40% of college students are working 1 to 2 part-time jobs. Wow. So that picture, I think, is particularly true for community college students, where they're not just like going to school and then going home and partying. By and large, most of them are juggling a lot of stuff in their life.
Yeah. Or here, and Ben, you and I have done community college ministry before. I think part of it too is there's I feel like a lot of times when you're ministering to a four-year student, there's a little bit more like direction in their life in terms of like, hey, this is what I want to study. This is what I want to do. This is where I'm going. Where I find a lot of times when we're ministering to community college students, there can be more questions. Like, I'm not quite sure. I'm struggling to know, what I'm gifted to do, what my kind of next steps are, which I actually think is a really great opportunity for somebody to step in and be a part of helping college students navigate those times in our life. And so it's even the realization that it's a different type of student than even what we're maybe a normal campus is used to.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of already talking about this, but let's talk more about that. What are some of the unique challenges of on a community college campus?
Yeah, I'd love to hear you, Steve, on this. In your experience, what are some of those challenges of a community college campus?
Yeah, so we already said a couple of them. I mean, one is that students are busy, and many of the students are they're commuting, so they only go on campus to take class, and then they're out, then they leave. Many times too, they're going off to class and then to work, and then to home to take care of family, or they're busy. So that's one of the biggest challenges. Is it's hard to build community. Doesn't mean it can't be done, but it just means there needs to be a really specific strategy that takes those into account. So those are a few things, just the commuter aspect and the reality that students are really busy. And also we already mentioned that the difference in like age groups. And so one important thing is to recognize that it probably is not the best plan to say we're going to have, our goal is to connect all the different age groups into this community. Like, it's much more helpful to have a certain, specific meetings or such that are focused on different, like you have the typical college age group, that would be your college group ministry. But then as you meet students on campus who are, in their mid-30s, or, single parents or whatever, that you have places to plug in those people into the local church or to disciple them. But so it's not like a typical college ministry where everyone is the same age and they all like fit well into the same group.
Yeah. Well, and I want to, do you have something else, Ben? Because I have a question on that. Yeah. So I want to kind of keep going with that, because I think we need to even take the next level, is because I think there's a lot of times we have expectations of what college ministry needs to look like, right? So we go into community college campus and say, okay, this is what I did on my 4-year university. We had a huge, large gathering and a worship leader and a band and a speaker and like all these different things. And what I see, and you've probably seen this a lot, Steve, too, is that just doesn't work, right? That methodology, when you come with a certain form and try to fit that form onto a community college campus, I see a lot of people struggle, burn out, quit, all these different things. And so I want to kind of jump off of that conversation where we just left off and say, okay, so how would you, so let's say you go into community college campus, how do you think about ministry differently than maybe a traditional way of doing college ministry?
Yeah, one of the first things I think about is small is so good. And to start off thinking, okay, my goal in the first month or two is just to find a few students to disciple and just to build community around disciple making. And I've experienced that numbers of times on different campuses. And if you just find a few students to disciple and then disciple them, and then that naturally builds community, because those students are loved and being discipled, growing in their faith, reading the word and being challenged. And then it's just a natural progression that once you start discipling a few, that just grows.
Yeah.
And so I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, which is a really good, to think about the rhythm of community college, right? Because you talked about that people may not be on dorms. They might kind of pop in and off. And so even finding a time to get everybody together, sometimes on community college ministry, is super hard. So if you're going into these kind of small little pockets of disciple making and community, like in some ways you're kind of strategically setting up the within the natural rhythm of the community college already.
Yeah. Yeah. And so your availability, I mean, the students' availability, you're building your ministry around key students that are available. So that solves that problem.
Yeah, which I think that's one of the challenges, right? If you're coming in with this kind of standard mode for most 4-year colleges, you probably bring in a staff member, or have someone who's kind of going to be the pioneer in that place. And the first thing that it defaults to is, okay, let's start a meeting. We're going to pick a night of the week. We're going to get some students and we're going to do our ministry night that night. We'll have a sermon, we'll have worship, whatever. And that, so I think what I'm hearing being said here is you almost have to shift the definition of success for community college ministry. Success maybe in those first several months is going to look more like, okay, I've befriended a couple students and we've gotten together several times to hang out, to talk, maybe to do some Bible study together, and I'm intentionally building a relationship with them, versus we started an event or we started this program where we're now inviting a bunch of people, which that's a hard shift to make. I think it's the shifting that definition of success is crucial, though, I think.
Yeah.
Well, then
I think,
go ahead. Keep going, Steve.
Just the strategy. I mean, even if I were to say like, oh, it's all about a large group meeting and not about disciple making, the best way to get to a large group meeting is to make disciples. And I don't think that that's the end goal. I mean, even Jesus, his end goal was, at least his ministry on earth, was to make disciples, to find 12. Yeah. And so what I've seen over and over again is, if that's your focus on finding a few to disciple, is that naturally lends itself to a larger gathering where you build community. The goal is building community around Christ and disciple making community. So I've seen that happen a number of times, but it has to start with disciple making.
Yeah, totally. And I think another thing, and this is where I even would love to shift the conversation a little bit, is in terms of like, I think one of the challenges when I did community college ministry was the constant kind of turnover, right? And so I think there's always a challenge of community college ministry of the consistency of having people engaged with the campus, and then even the mentality of, because the turnover is so quick, that you have to be thinking about kind of the next people behind them, because they're going to probably graduate a lot sooner and go on. So what would you say, Steve, is like the importance of like consistency, and how do you engage consistently on a campus with students turning over so quickly?
Yeah, I think one of the keys is having a local like believer, whether it's a church that owns it or someone who's connected locally, who, you know, connected to a church, who is regularly on campus. And so what I mean by that is like even like a 2-hour slot of time once a week, same time every week, that you're on campus, discovering spiritual interest on campus, and then that leads to discipling a few students. And I think that's the key, because what happens is if that person stops being committed to being on campus and just let the students lead, you're going to have great student leadership for a year or two, yeah. And then they're going to graduate and be gone, and then you're back to square one.
Yeah, I think that's so crucial to really be grounded in the local church, or at the very least, like you're saying, you know, you have a couple people, it might be from a mix of churches, people who say, hey, we have a heart for this campus, let's start doing something, and have that really be the foundation, the core team. Yeah. And then the students are in reality going to be filtering through. And I think that's one of the things you got to build a different expectation into if you're on a community college campus. I mean, I know when we were doing stuff at CLC, Central Lakes College in the Brainerd area, where both Andy and I were for a while, that was a unique challenge, right? We'd have people who were a part of the ministry for a while, but 6 months, a year, you know, people would be gone. So we really had, the core team was people who were either, for whatever reason, were mostly people who were committed longer term to the Brainerd Lakes area. They had family there, they were working there, they worked at a church, or, you know, whatever. And I think that's so crucial.
Yeah. Yeah. Why don't, Steve, I would love to, because I know you and I have talked about this, give us a couple examples of that, like of people that you've worked with, right, that who have been consistent, their ages, their kind of background, and just give us kind of a variety, because I know there's lots of different people you've worked with to engage on community college campuses.
Yeah, so I'll share about in Santa Maria, there's a community college, Santa Maria, California, Central Coast. There's a community college, Hancock College, about 20,000 students, and they have a small satellite campus in Lompoc, which is where they have launching rockets into the sky, so it's kind of cool. But small, tiny campus, and there's a few retired folks there. A retired lady named Carol, and she's in her mid-70s, and she actually, she's not officially retired. She does, her family owns a thrift store, and so she's busy working, caring for like a dozen grandkids, helping to love on them. And she just has a heart for students. And so she goes on campus for 2 hours once a week. And about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, she started doing that with me, going on campus, and she's been so consistent. And then I moved. We moved out of the area, and she continues. And she's the one who keeps that ministry going, because she's on campus. She opened her home, and they do 20 students come to her home weekly on Friday nights for meeting together, and they love it. She makes them food, and so she's my hero. But she just 2 hours a week, once a week, she's there, and she shares the gospel with probably 20 students every single time she's on campus, and new students she connects with, and they come to their Friday night meeting or join a Bible study on campus with, you know, some of the student leaders lead. And then another couple, Jim and Kathy, live in Lompoc, and so they do the same thing at the Lompoc campus, which is a tiny little satellite campus. And you walk on campus at any time, and probably you're not going to see any students, because they go on campus, go straight to class, and then go straight to the cars. But Jim and Kathy are so faithful; they're there at a table, and they're like the only club table ever set up, and And they're just sitting there. And between classes, students walk by, and a handful of students will come by and do their little spiritual survey, and they'll share the gospel with these students. And they've started, discipling a few students. They've had a handful of students put their faith in Christ just from their interactions with them. It's amazing. So those are two examples, and I think it's happening on, there's multiple examples of that. Just regular people who. One more example. There's a college pastor in Manteca, and at a large church, but they're not doing anything on campus at the community college in Modesto, but they wanted to, and so we started going with him regularly. And then he found like 4 or 5 retired folks in his church who were like, "Oh, I'd love to learn how to do that." So they're regular presence on campus, sharing the gospel with. Seriously, you go on campus for 2 hours, you'll have 20 conversations where you share the gospel with students, and they're so hungry.
Yeah,
I love it.
I think that's such an essential thing, because I think what happens on a lot of 4-year campuses, they're larger campuses, there's more students. So I feel like what often happens is you get a college ministry that in reality is youth group for college students. You get Christian kids coming from youth group saying, where's the ministry that I can be a part of? And not that there's not conversions happening. I know like Cru and Chi Alpha and these other organizations do plenty of evangelism, but at least in my experience, I can't speak nationally, there's a lot of the core of the ministry that starts is built on people who are coming in saying, hey, I'm coming from youth group, I want some sort of ministry like that, which is what I love your passion, Steve, for the evangelism piece. And I think that's so essential. Like even thinking of Andy, when we were doing Junction 122 and trying to, kind of get some traction on the community college campus there in the Brainerd Lakes area, at least from my perspective, I feel like it never fully got up and running. It never reached what I was dreaming of. And I think part of it was we were not pressing hard into evangelism. Some of it just lack of knowledge, some of it's lack of, probably straight up lack of boldness and courage to have some of those conversations. So I think like that's one takeaway for, if you want to do it on a community college campus, even more so, it's going to work equally well on a 4-year college campus. Like if we're not doing that kind of evangelistic work and discipling people who are not Christians to faith in Jesus, towards Jesus, like the ministry's not going to last. It might last on a 4-year campus where you have 20,000 students, so there's a solid percentage who are already Christians and will come to your ministry and then help sustain it. But on a community college campus, that I don't know, that security belt is not there.
You also, just from what you're saying, Ben, it just reminds me that what is the purpose? Like, what is your what is your goal? Is it to really have a youth group of college group students where they just come and eat pizza and hang out? Or is there something greater? Like you want to really equip these students in their faith and teach them how to share their faith and teach them how to read the word, how to teach someone else how to read the word. And if your goal is to disciple students to be multipliers, that they would live their whole lives, like their whole futures are all about the kingdom and making disciples, then you've got to focus on disciple making. And evangelism is part of that, because teaching students how to share their faith is key. So I totally agree with you.
That's good. That's good.
Well, hey, go ahead.
Well, here you're kind of looking at our time. We're about 25 minutes in. So here's what I would love to do is kind of end on this right here. So Steve has joined our team to do this thing, not just with community college campuses, but college campuses as well, in what we call stage 0, right? And stage 0 is a church or a leader that comes to us and say, hey, I have a heart for a campus. I don't know what to do. Like, how do I get this thing going? Why don't you just give us like a 2-minute snapshot, Steve, of what you do with people in those early days to help build momentum on a college campus?
Yeah, well, so we have stage 0 intro, which is 4 sessions, 4 modules, which is basically getting your feet wet. And just, it's basically Zoom calls. It's learning a few simple tools to get on campus for those 2 hours time slot once a week, learning some very simple tools to discover spiritual interest on campus in a very, like, it's so respectful and loving, and it's so effective. It's just a spiritual survey. You set up a table and students come by and take the spiritual survey, and it works. It really works to connect with people. So it's just a tool to invest in relationships and find out where people are at spiritually. And then the next step is to follow up, learning some tools to follow up with interested students. And there's 2 key tools that we use. One is, the first is just a very simple, like 1-minute way to share the gospel in a very relational way that invites people to the next step, which would be to keep meeting, to explore who Jesus is and what it means to walk with him and know him. And the other simple follow-up tool is just a way to, it's like a 1-minute tool to teach someone how to read the Bible. And so on campus, it's just such a simple way to say, hey, you ever read the Bible before? Does that interest you? And if the answer is yes, like, hey, do you have another minute? Can I show you something really quick? And it's just a very simple way to spend a minute or 2 minutes in the Bible with someone, and then to be able to say, like, hey, would you want to do this again sometime? And so it's a very simple way to discover spiritual interest and then build, follow up with someone. So that's it. Really, the key is getting on campus, finding out a very simple way to discover spiritual interest, and then follow up. And the last module of that intro series is looking at kind of, okay, what could this look like? What does disciple making look like as far as like strategy to keep growing? Like, how do you go about that? And so that's it. It's an intro to doing that. And then our Stage 0 series, which is 8 modules. Early on in that, like the second or third, it's actually getting on campus, and I travel to you and I go on campus with you and show you how to do this.
That's awesome.
Which I'm not going to lie, it's on my list, Steve, to have you come here to Fargo sometime in the
Awesome.
next couple of months once COVID stuff chills out a little bit, and do that with our team.
Yeah, cool. Well, here's the offer, man. If you're in a church, if you're a leader and you're struggling to figure out how to get on a community college campus, if you look at a college campus, I'm a college pastor, how do we do this more effectively? We would love to connect you with Steve, and he could be a resource for you. Just even have some initial conversations, or he could talk to you about even coming into that process and him doing it with you to help you move forward. And we'd love to connect you with him to do that at some point down the road. So that's an open offer. We can get you connected to Steve, and he can share even in greater depths just some of the things that he does. So let's do this. Any last things you want to say, Steve?
The Lord's at work. The Lord's at work on community college campuses. And, one of the things I think of is when this COVID-19 thing is over, it's like students are at a different spot. And I think what we're going to see is a fresh hunger for the gospel. And I think the harvest is ripe. And, in college ministry, we talk about the importance of the fall, like those first couple of weeks on campus, how important that is. Think about how greater that is going to be, like after the hiatus of COVID-19. Like, man, what an opportunity now to dig into these things and be ready so that when campuses open up, like, we're ready to get on. Yeah.
Cool. Here would be my encouragement, is that I think for a lot of people, probably if you might be in a city where you haven't thought about it, but you probably have a community college campus nearby, and it just kind of gets overlooked general in the sense of opportunities for ministry. So if you're watching this and you're a pastor or you're a youth leader or something, check it out. I bet you have a college campus within 30 miles of you. That might be something that could be an amazing opportunity to practice evangelism, get out there and put some disciple making into action.
Yeah. And the last thing I would say is kind of just echoing both of you guys is this is a huge opportunity. And I think the more and more as the prices of college go up, community college is going to be more and more a viable option for people. I got juniors that are going to be seniors next year, and one of them, we're talking about community college right? And so I just think that there's a huge opportunity if the churches can capture a vision for reaching that community college and have significant impact along the way. So super pumped.
Can I say one more thing, Andy?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So I think oftentimes leaders think, oh, I don't have the capacity to do this. Like, I don't have the time to get on campus, 2 hours a week. It's too much. But there's a Carol or there's a Kathy and a Jim in your church, and they need this to be able to. So there are people out there in your churches who would love to learn how to make disciples on campus.
Love it. As usual, if there's anything that we can do to help, we'd love to just reach out to us, and we'd love to talk a little bit more about your ministry, things that you're doing with college students, with young adults, and how to engage them on a deeper way and be more effective in reaching them and discipling them. So thanks guys for the conversation today. Hope you guys have a good weekend.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
We'll talk to everybody else later. Have a good weekend, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.